Obama, and it was played on the radio that night. And we all know the story about Elvis is so nervous, he goes to the movie, and they call the house in Lauderdale Courts, and they say, we've got to have Elvis come into the studio. And this guy was in the studio the day Elvis came in. Take us back to that day.
Well, the reason I was at the radio station that night in the first place, I had no reason to be there other than some of my ex-high school football playing buddies wanted to see what the studios at WHBQ looked like. They had driven over that day, and I was showing them around the station. I was the morning man. I did the morning show on WHBQ called Clock Watchers. I should have been home in bed. And thank God that God put me in that position. I have no reason to know why, but for some reason, it was mandated by the man upstairs that I be there that night. And when I heard the commotion going on in the control room and the switchboard lit up like the proverbial Christmas tree, I went into the control room, and Dewey, who in those days was playing in 1954, July, remember, black music for white kids. Kids were just getting into what would eventually become rock and roll. But in those days, it was rhythm and blues. And that's what Dewey played every night. And I walked in there and I met Sam for the first time, shook his hand. Elvis was playing That's All Right Mama on this acetate. And he played it over and over and over again. After the first couple of plays, that's when the switchboard lit up. And he ended up playing it 12 times in a row. And we called, and as Tom said, and parents went over to the Suzor's Theater on Decatur Street, where Elvis had gone to see a double feature Western, walked up and down the aisle, found him sitting there by himself, whispered to him about the excitement. He jumped up. They came down to the mezzanine floor of the old Chiska Hotel on South Main Street, where WHBQ was located. And they walked in, and that's when I met the parents for the first time, and met Sam for the first time, and of course met the king of rock and roll for the first time. He sat down in front of a microphone. He had no idea Dewey Phillips turned the microphone on, because he later said in many books and on many occasions, had he known he was being interviewed on the air, Dewey just started talking to him about this and that. He said, I wouldn't have been able to talk because he was still kind of withdrawn, And so that was the first interview ever conducted with this new superstar to be. And I am the only living person who was in that control room that night. Everybody else has passed on.
And the Chiska Hotel is undergoing renovation, and just before they kind of gutted it, and they're renovating it into condominiums and things there now. But just before they did that, you guys were able to. I don't know if the statute of limitations is up yet on how you got into the building that was condemned, but you guys went in there with a photographer and you found, that area, that booth.
Yeah, found that booth where Dewey did his show every night. He had his own booth because he had a penchant for tearing things up. He would take a 78 RPM record, which was easy to break, and throw it down on the turntable. Many times broke it before he could ever play it. But we found that old control room, and it's interesting to note that they have taken the actual tiles, everything from that control room, and have reconstructed that control room with the turntables, with the RCA board, with Dewey's microphone, everything, just as it was, as near as possible, and have reconstructed it at Sun Records in Memphis. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Isn't it something?
Yes.
Yeah. It really, again, it gives you the feeling that, you could have been there that night in that room. That's where it all took place.
And for